You came to Pyongyang not for adventure, but because a Swiss medical company offered you 3 times your Zurich salary. You are 31 years old, recently divorced, and the familiar geography of your Swiss life had become unbearable without her in it. You are a biomedical equipment technician assigned to install diagnostic equipment at Pyongyang General Hospital on a 6-month contract. Your minder is a man named Beck, 38, efficient, speaking English with the flat precision of someone who learned it from manuals. You're housed in the Koryo Hotel, eating breakfast every morning with aid workers and engineers who made the same salary calculation you did. You don't socialize, not out of rudeness, but out of the specific aftermath of a divorce finalized 8 months ago after 4 years. On the evening of March the 14th, you walk further than intended, past your permitted radius, into a district you don't recognize. There's a bar with no sign outside, small and warm, and you go in because your jacket is inadequate for a Pyongyang March night. The woman at the far end of the bar is already there, civilian clothes of good quality, her hair down, something heavy recently removed. You sit at the other end. The bartender places a drink in front of you without asking, and she speaks first in perfect English. She says she is having a bad evening. You say you're having a mediocre one, and she almost laughs, but not quite. Her name, she tells you, is Sun-hee, which is not her real name, but you have no framework to know that yet. She asks what you do and listens with genuine interest, asking questions about diagnostic equipment and whether fixing things that save lives gives you satisfaction. You drink more, she drinks more, and somewhere in the second hour she asks if you're married, and you say you were. You tell her the honest answer, that love requires maintenance and you are both better at other things, and she goes quiet for a moment. She says she understands that specific kind of ending, the kind where the wound has no name and therefore cannot be treated. You look at her when she says this, really look, and she's looking back in a way people do when they've said something accidentally true. What happens next happens the way things happen between two people carrying something heavy who briefly find someone whose arms are also full. You wake up in your hotel room, and she is gone. No note, no number, just air that still holds the shape of someone recent. You think about her for the following weeks, and you ask Beck carefully about bars in that district one afternoon after work. Beck's face does something that lasts 1 second before reassembling, and he says that district is residential with no establishments for foreign visitors. You take the hint and don't ask again. You work, the installation proceeds, and the hospital staff warm to you the way professionals warm to competence. On a Tuesday in late April, 6 weeks after the bar, Beck comes to your hotel room at 7 in the morning for the first time ever. His face is the face from the 1 second moment, except now it has become his permanent expression, and he says you need to come with him. The building they take you to is in a district you don't recognize despite 73 days of learning this city by walking at night. A man in a uniform sits across a table, 50-something, with the face of someone who finds nothing interesting anymore, because he has seen everything already. He asks if you know a woman named Ri Hwa-young. You say you don't, and he places a photograph on the table between you. It is her, Sun-hee, who is not Sun-hee, who is Ri Hwa-young, Deputy Director of the State Planning Commission. She is one of the most powerful economic policymakers in North Korea, sitting in rooms where the future of 25 million people gets decided. She is also married, and the second photograph he places on the table is a wedding portrait with a man in a general's uniform beside her. Her husband is General Jang Sung-min of the Korean People's Army, and this detail sits in your brain and changes the geometry of everything else. You say the bravest or the stupidest thing you have ever said, which is that you would like to speak to someone from the Swiss embassy. The man in the uniform writes something, does not answer, and then tells you that Deputy Director Ri Hwa-young is pregnant. The pregnancy has been confirmed. The general has been informed. The timeline does not match the marriage, and the investigation has produced your name. You ask to see her, and he writes something else and says that is not possible at this time, and they take you to a room. The room has a bed, a window, a lock on the outside, and a view of an empty courtyard that you will memorize over the coming days. What you don't know is that across the city, Ri Hwa-young is sitting in her own room having a different version of the same conversation. What she says in that room is everything about herself and nothing about you, because she has calculated what is safe to give and what must be kept. She tells them about the marriage to Jang Sung-min, arranged 8 years ago through a political alignment between two families who needed the union to work. She tells them it has been a performance of a marriage rather than a marriage, professional rather than personal, transactional from the first day to this one. She tells them about the argument on March the 14th, which was not ordinary, but the specific argument she had been carrying for 3 years. 3 years earlier, Jang Sung-min told her he did not want children, that children complicated careers, that their arrangement required no biological continuation. He said it in the language of a man who views everything as a transaction and had long since filed his wife under compel. She said nothing for 3 years, and then on March the 14th, she said everything, and he responded with the cruelty of a man never before challenged. She walked out into the cold Pyongyang night and into a bar that exists on no official map, carrying 3 years of silence that had finally broken. What she does not tell them, and will never tell them, is that she does not regret the pregnancy because that information is hers alone to keep. She has concluded with the same analytical clarity she applies to budget forecasts that unplanned does not mean unwanted, and this conclusion she keeps inside where no room can reach it. Day 3. A Swiss consular officer named Gerber arrives, 60, compact, wearing the expression of a man for whom difficult situations stopped producing expressions long ago. He tells you what he knows, which is little, and what he doesn't know, which is more, and uses the word sensitive 3 times in 4 minutes. You ask about her, and he says he cannot discuss other parties. You ask if she is safe, and he says he genuinely does not have that information. Day 7, the man in the uniform returns with a document and a determination made at a level he cannot specify by people he cannot name. The first component is your expulsion within 72 hours. Contract terminated, the 60% complete installation to be finished by a local technician trained on the remaining procedures. The second component he delivers carefully, saying the deputy director submitted a formal medical request that has been reviewed and granted, and you ask what it was. He says she requested that the child, if born, receive a designation acknowledging the biological father's nationality in the official record, in case it becomes relevant. A notation will exist somewhere in the records of a country that erases inconvenient things, not a name, not an address, just one word, Swiss. A door left open in the architecture of a bureaucracy that specializes in closing doors, and she opened it herself at a cost you will never fully calculate. Day 9, Gerber walks you through departure, returns your passport, tells you your belongings are at the airport, and no public statement will be made by anyone. In the car to the airport, Pyongyang moves past the window, gray and permanent, and keeping everything it knows behind the decision of what to show the world. At the airport, Gerber shakes your hand and says you conducted yourself with considerable composure, which is his way of saying you did not make it worse. You board the plane, it lifts, and below you, Pyongyang flattens into the gray geometry of a city that will not acknowledge your 73 days in it. You open your passport and find a folded piece of paper in the back that was not there before, single line, careful English handwriting, not Gerber's. It says the equipment you installed will save lives, so will the decision I made, and thank you for both, and there is no name. You fold it back, place it in your jacket pocket, and hold your hand flat against it as the cloud closes over Pyongyang below the climbing plane. You think about the child who will grow up in that city, raised by a woman whose hair comes down when no one official is watching. A child who will learn to walk and talk and become a person in a country that will never officially connect them to a Swiss biomedical technician named you. Somewhere in a bureaucratic file, the word Swiss sits in a notation that you will never read, in a record you will never be permitted to access. That word is the most and the least you will ever be to someone who carries half of what you are, and you will never stop knowing it. You will go back to Zurich, back to the work, back to the quiet apartment, and the walking at night, and the brain that runs at 2 a.m. And somewhere in the gray grid of a city below the cloud, a door is opened that a very precise and very brave woman opened at great personal cost. And you will spend the rest of your life on this side of it, knowing you have a child, knowing you will never see that child, and knowing the child will never know you exist.